Good. I'm glad.
Just listen. That was, yeah.
So we're not going to see lots and lots of cameras, are we? Ah, here we go.
I'm not sure.
Gemma.
Oh, do one of those. You ready, Claire?
Yeah, ready to go. Yeah.
We're ready.
Rebecca, are you going to kick off the session for us, or would you like us to?
I'm not sure. Should we just start?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We're really thrilled that you're here, and it's been great to see all your names popping up. It's made me curious about where everybody is from, but it's great that we've got some people who are joining for the first time and from lots of different places. So Sarah and I are really excited to be running this session today, which is all about empowering authentic goal setting. And the structure of the session is that we're going to just introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about us and what we do. And then we're going to interview each other. Sarah and I have known each other for quite some time. So that's really exciting for us because we've worked together over quite a period of time. And we're also going to have an opportunity then to move into breakout rooms and explore some questions together and then come back together again at the end. But maybe, Sarah, do you want to start off by introducing yourself and telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, hello. Nice to meet you. And I'm thrilled to be here. My name's Sarah, Sarah Tancell, and I run Neuro.D, which is a neurodiversity consultancy. And some helpful context to how I got to today and talking to everybody here is that I have been in human resources for over 20 years, and my experience ranges from setting up and running my own HR consultancy right through to some senior executive HR roles, predominantly in the STEM sector. In my most recent role, I was based at Take Two, so there are some familiar names I'm seeing today, and I was international HR director at that in London. And during that time, one of my key objectives was to set up and implement a neurodiversity program. And at the time, I always knew that I had dyslexia. It's something that was identified at university. However, as my seniority grew within the company and my remit got wider, I realized that I was starting to really struggle, and I couldn't understand why. And that ranged from walking away from a conversation and wondering why it felt like I'd spoken a different language, or becoming really frustrated because I was finding some of the day-to-day workplace tasks really challenging, and I couldn't understand why. I'm 43. I started to wonder if actually perhaps it's my age. So explored what that was further, and it wasn't that, thankfully, or yet. However, when I was learning and educating myself about neurodiversity, because I was designing the program, I was looking through and understanding the traits of ADHD. And I was going through the list and I was thinking, hang on a minute, this looks very familiar. So on the back of that, I went and got an assessment. And of course, I couldn't have a little bit of ADHD. I had raging ADHD. And also, to my surprise, I also found out that I had autism, which was something I wasn't expecting at all. So I took some time out. I was completely burnt out and wanted to understand what I was going to do next. And I realized that my passion really was, and has always been, supporting people in the workplace. That's why I've been in HR. But it was very much to support those neurodivergent individuals who had struggled just as much as I had. So staged or to the right, Neuro.D was born. And now I work with neurodivergent individuals who are struggling in the workplace, just like I did. I'm a coach, so I support them on a one-to-one basis. But then, given my experience in HR, I also work with HR teams to help them build the systems, the frameworks to support those neurodivergent employees and making a neuro-inclusive culture. I think you'll all notice that, that I stutter a bit and I stumble on my words, and I would be doing a disservice to the neurodivergent community if I ignored that. It's because I'm neurodivergent, and prior to embracing the way my brain's wired, I would have shied away from anything that meant that I'd have to speak or talk openly or to others. Now I don't. This is me. So please buckle up. This is how it is. And we just move on. The internet's not stalled my screen. It's just the way I'm built. And actually, I'm proud of that. So that's me. Claire, tell us about you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So I'm Claire, and I've been running my own business for 15 years now, collaborative consulting group. I absolutely love what I do. My mission really is to help individuals and teams and organisations to fulfil their potential. And I typically work with leaders and leadership teams. And the kind of work that I do is executive coaching, which is how I met Sarah. I also run leadership development programs, and I work with teams, very often leadership teams. So I really love what I do. In the last 15 years, I've worked with 50 different clients, and they've ranged from startups to fast growth businesses to big corporates, and some big charities and the NHS as well. And I've worked with 5 different gaming companies, and I've loved working with all of them. And although they've all been very, very different, it's been really, really fascinating for me. So it's a sector that I am really excited about, interested in, and I love learning from. So really, really happy to be here. So that's a bit about me.
That's right, and that's where we met Claire, is at Take Two, when you undertook some leadership sessions for us, and you were a fantastic executive coach for me and helped me develop my career. And we've stayed in touch ever since, so hence today. I'm just looking through the chat here. It would be really helpful to understand, if possible, where is everybody? Are we all in the UK? I think, oh, no, sorry. Hi, Sarah, from Hungary. Where else have we got? Just really quickly, it would be really helpful to understand who we're talking to, because we're actually just talking to ourselves at the moment, and it'd be really helpful. Oh, Miss, thank you for sharing as well. Nicola, San Francisco, Germany, hi. Have we actually got anyone from the UK apart from us and Rebecca?
We've got Brighton. We'll have.
Wow. Old Bedfordshire, you're near me, Miss.
I think Gemma is probably in Kent.
Oh, right, okay. Jacqueline. Oh, very familiar. Thank you for sharing. Derby, yeah, know that one well. I think that might be everybody. Just for me, I'm in Buckinghamshire, so near Tring and Aylesbury. That's where I am. Where are you, Claire?
In Canterbury, in Kent.
Right. Okay. Well, it's lovely to virtually meet you all. I think now is probably a really good time to go into our questions, if that's okay with everybody. And then we can just talk about our experiences and insights between us. So, Claire, I've known you for a number of years, and I have no doubt that you have expertly put together your goals and resolutions for this year. Can you tell us a bit more about this and what informs you to actually decide what you're going to focus on?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I do try to sort of make time to step back and reflect, and I suppose think about what are my goals. And most of the time I do that. I probably spend more time doing that in the summer, because August is often a bit of a lull for me. Lots of my clients, they don't want to have coaching sessions or team building in August, so I take a bit of time then, but sometimes I'll do it over the Christmas period. But I find it pretty difficult to do goal setting unless I have some time of reflection. So some stepping back and really being thoughtful is really key. And the kind of things that I think about when I'm doing my goal setting, they have to be informed by my personal values. And what I've learned is I have spent quite a lot of time really thinking about my personal values. And when I set up my business, I spent lots of time thinking about my values, because it was really important that everything flowed from that I was going to be living out my values. But I do find it really interesting when I'm coaching people that sometimes when they're at a crossroads in their career and they're thinking about what they want to do next, very often people, they've been so busy in their lives and in their careers, they haven't really paused and they haven't thought about their values. So for me, one of the most important things is that any plans or resolutions I make, they are completely aligned with my personal values, and that I'm able to live those out in all aspects of my life. And that then determines what success looks like for me in my life and my career. And what success looks like for me is going to be different for what it looks like for you, and that's okay. So some of the things that I would often incorporate into my goals, they might be related to work or career, and they will evolve over time, because what I'm focusing on or how I want to grow or develop is going to change. But I will regularly step back and think, where do I want to be in 5 years' time? Or what sort of work do I want to be doing in 5 years' time? And what is it I can be doing this year that will help me to get there? So, for example, I've always worked with leadership teams, probably for about 30 years now. But more recently, I've started to work with boards, and they're completely different. So I've had to read a lot of things and study and learn lots of things. So I set myself some goals to really make sure that I was going to be effective at that. And a few years ago, I was noticing that so many of my clients, they really needed some help when it came to resilience. So there was individual resilience, team resilience, and organizational resilience. So I kind of set myself a goal to look into that and think about what tools I could develop that would be really helpful. And as part of that, I ended up doing a 9-month qualification on resilience. So I needed to do the stepping back and reflecting in order to do the planning. But I also do goal setting in relation to, very often, health and fitness. Every single channel on the TV seems to have a program at the moment. And for me, it's normally about sleep and a diet and exercise. And I try to keep it really simple, but I do find that's really, really helpful. I also set goals in relation to family or friends. And that's about thinking about, what do I want to spend time on this year? Who do I want to spend time with? How often? How am I going to make sure it happens? And that can be as simple from, making sure that I want to spend a bit more time with my mum, who's getting a bit older. I want to be there. I want to visit her every couple of months. Or it can be simple things like date night, making sure I spend time with my husband. And it's interesting. I'm now a parent of 2 adult children, and so I've almost been thinking about what are my goals here. And I suppose my goal is that I keep a really great connection with my kids, but I don't interfere or become annoying, which I think, it's really easy to
it's
become
a fine line, that one, speaking from experience.
So whether it's friendships or family, or other relationships, I always make goals around those. It's who do I want to spend time with? Who do I want to invest in? What does that actually look like? And one of the ways that I spend time with friends and since the pandemic, is that I walk with friends. I don't tend to go out for coffee with people anymore. I go on walks with people, and I love it. And so I want to keep that up in the next year. And the last thing I normally make goals around is character. And what I mean by that is, what do I want to work on in me? What is it in me that I want to get better at or improve? And that could be things like, I've heard some people say, I want to be more compassionate, or for me, my goal is I want to become more patient this year. I don't feel like I'm a patient person. I disguise it really well, but I get feedback from my family that I can definitely be more patient. So that feedback has landed, and I need to do something about that. So those are the sorts of things that I make goals for. Some of them work, and a lot of them are personal things as well. So yeah, does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And as you were talking, it reminded me of the resilience session that you ran for us in our post-COVID world, with the leadership team at Take Two. So it was really helpful for us. And another thing you mentioned was stepping away. And you're so right. I always get my best ideas when I'm on holiday. Maybe I should book some more, or when I'm in the shower. It's never actually, if you sit me down at a desk and ask me to write something, I'm not wired like that anyway, but you're so right. It really is, it's about stepping away. So no, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question, if that's okay. So you've talked about going back to the values, and how you go about setting your goals and your resolutions. But what would you say are the key ingredients and principles in ensuring that your goal setting is effective and achievable?
Yeah, so I think for me, once I've made those goals, they have to be reflected in my calendar. And if they're not, if I don't schedule something, it doesn't happen. So whether that's date night, I'm going to spend time with my husband, it's got to go in the calendar, otherwise it doesn't happen. Or whether it's, I really want to develop this particular expertise, I've got to put it in my calendar to make sure I give time to it. So put it in your calendar. I think the other thing is around agency. And what I mean by that is recognizing that we have power and control, probably more than we think. So we have to make things happen. And so when it comes to personal development, I always say to people, be really assertive in asking for what you need to achieve your career goals. Don't assume somebody's going to say no. I spent 10 years working at Pfizer, and I always asked quite big things in terms of, I really want to go on this course. I want to be trained to do that. I want to, can I travel there? Can I experience this? And I just asked for everything I ever wanted because I was hungry to learn. And people normally said yes to everything. Sometimes my husband would go, you're really, can't believe you're going to ask for that. But I did. And it was worth it. And I think when it comes to goal setting with work, it's really important that, we're trying to make sure any goals that we have, they align with collective success, the success of the team, the organization that we work with. So I'm sometimes quite surprised when I work with people that when they know that they don't necessarily have goals, or they don't understand what their company goals are or the team goals are. So I think if any of you are ever in that position, ask questions. What are we collectively aiming for? What are the goals? What does success look like? What are the priorities? So anything you're giving your time to, you can try and align it where possible. Obviously, we need to make sure our goals are impactful and achievable. That's really, really important. They need to be aligned with our, values and aspirations, and have a really good sense of what's going to make progress. But the other thing that I think is really, really important is making sure that we ask lots and lots of feedback. So feedback from other people who can have input to our goals, feedback about, what do we need to work on? What do we need to get better at? And so, I always encourage people to, ask for feedback from your peers, from your colleagues, from the people who work for you, from your boss. I always have time with other consultants. Very often, at the start of the year, we'll ask each other, what are you going to work on this year? How do you want to develop? And we'll kind of give each other feedback about what we're observing and ask questions. So feedback can be fantastic for giving us insights around the goals that we should be working on. And lastly, ask for help and support. That's not a sign of weakness. So think about, who do you want to learn from? Who's got a skill you haven't got? Who can be your mentor? And be greedy. Have as many mentors as you want. A mentor is simply somebody that who will every now and again say yes to you buying them a coffee, and give some input and advice and guidance. And so seek out people that are going to be helpful to you, and ask for as much help and advice and support as you need. That's a positive thing, not a negative thing. So that's probably me, Sarah. I'd love to flip it round, and you will have a different way of thinking about this, which is fantastic, which will kind of be really interesting, I think, for everyone to hear about. So I'd love you to sort of share your perspective and your kind of thoughts, because looking at goal setting sort of through a neurodiversity lens, you might think about goal setting in a different way, and I wondered if you could sort of share what your approach is.
Yeah. So I think I will die if my ADHD brain gets given another task list or a to-do list that's in a structure or a way that's not built for the way I think. For me, I am very much a visual thinker. I'm creative. I think I'm innovative. And I certainly don't think in a linear way, but I'm very good at mind mapping and building associations between things. So with that in mind, I always start my year visualizing, because that's how I think. So why do it another way? And what I look at is I ask myself some questions, and it's what do I want to be? What do I want to do? And what do I want to have? And then what I also do is I visualize me achieving those three things and what that looks like at the end of the year for me. But it's not so much about what it looks like. For me, it's about how does it feel? What does the world around me look like? How does those things that I've decided to work on, how does that impact the people around me? My husband, my two adult sort of children, and my colleagues, my clients who I work with. So for me, what it's really important that I take that time out, and sometimes I'll even brainstorm with a close friend, you sometimes, or my husband, and talk about, I really, really like this. This is my passion. This is my strengths. So I'm going to focus on that. But on that note, it's really important because my neurodivergent brain has lots of strengths. It also experiences several challenges. So what's really key, and this is the bit where talking it through really helps, is to be reminded that those are my challenges. So, for example, I don't think I've ever been able to do my tax return on time. I don't think I've ever done one. I've always had to get somebody else to do it for me. Finance and numbers is not my thing. So what I'm certainly not going to do is, for my goal for this year, it's certainly not going to be about, hey, I'm going to do my tax return on time. I'm going to learn how to do bookkeeping and I'm going to excel in it and I'm going to work out. No, it makes me physically cringe thinking that I would do that. So it's very much focused on what the strengths are and enhancing them. So I take that visualization piece, and then instead of the list and instead of lots of objectives, for me, it's having a word of the year, and then applying it to all of those areas of my life. So, for example, last year was boundaries. And it was boundaries because of my burnout experience from the year before, working ridiculous hours, being on a train for 4 hours a day, getting to the office, and saying yes far too often to things that didn't set my soul on fire. I didn't want to do it. And it could have been anything in work, from doing an Excel spreadsheet, public speaking, right through to focusing on something that I had absolutely no interest in. It wasn't going to happen. So it was very much on boundaries, and I was able to apply that to all areas of my life. So the friendships I had, the types of clients that I worked with, were those the people that were aligned with values, to my own personal values. My ADHD energy is expensive, so it's making sure that I used it in the right areas that were going to fill up my cup, but were going to help me achieve the 3 areas in my life that I wanted to focus on. So that was really important for me last year. And again, as I said, what I did was I put those into mind maps. I'm in my office right now, and on my wall I have a massive this giant post-it notes with all of those key points: who I want to be, how I want to feel. It's a vision board. It's essentially a giant wall-sized vision board, and that just helps me stay on task. If you're going to put a list of objectives in a file, I will never look at it ever again, like ever again. Or it's going to be in a folder on my laptop. I will never look at that. So it's really important that I can see it, I can feel it, and it's motivational, and it guides me to that thing I want to have, that what I want to do, what I want to achieve, and who I want to be. Which is a very long-winded way of answering that question. I hope that made sense.
Fantastic. No, I don't know about everybody else, but I wish we could have Sarah's camera swung round so we could see all these wonderful mind maps.
I'll take a picture of it.
Yeah, but it's really good to hear, because when you talk, you're so passionate about how that really helps, and how it's exciting for you, yeah, and how a different format would just leave you cold. So I think it's really good to hear, because we're all so different. So no, that's super helpful. So given everything that you've learned about yourself, what can workplaces do to really support neurodivergent employees who might need a different sort of way of going about goal setting to some of the ways that we might typically have seen in most workplaces?
So I think it's really important to understand that not every brain in the workplace is going to be able to follow a rigid framework. And then, first of all, it's key to understanding that there are different thinking styles within your business. There's diversity of thought, and how does that play itself out in the type of objectives that you're setting them. And I think what would be really helpful in terms of the structure of those, I've worked with some clients, and we do goal setting workshops for their neurodivergent employees, which it almost sets a level of that psychological safety. So we're saying, look, it's okay. You don't have to follow this process. We want to get the best out of you. We want to focus on your strengths and understand how we can support you in doing so. So I think that's really important. Then, if you are that big picture thinker, there's two things you can do. As an individual, get a buddy. I live and die by a buddy. I've got about 4 actually. And with them, I'll do things like body doubling. So we'll both be on a call, and we're not talking, we're just doing a task, but it's that level of accountability. And also a buddy, we check in with each other and go, hey, you wanted to achieve this one thing this month. Have you achieved it? What can I do to support you? What's getting in your way? What are the barriers at work? If you're in a workplace setting, that I can either get someone to remove them for you or advocate that they need removing. And I think that's really key. If, for example, you're a people manager and you have an individual who, a member of your team who is neurodivergent, first of all, the most helpful thing you can do is ask them. Just ask them. Don't assume that this person, just because you've printed it out and give it to them, is going to be able to visualize or creatively come up with their own objectives. So ask them how they think, ask them what their challenges are, and work around them. And I think that's really key. And if, for example, your employee has ADHD, there are other neurodivergent traits. If it is ADHD, the best way you can support them is by breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces. And Stephen Bartlett's just brought out a journal on the 1%, and I know there are a number of books about compound gains. So 1% each day will all add up to that bigger picture. So it's about how can that manager break them down, make them understandable to that individual, make sure that there are, again, no barriers to achieving those, but also the accountability. So it's just that little reminder, oh, okay, hang on, this is your goal for the year. Let's just do check-ins with that and make sure that you are aligned to achieving them. But also redefine success. Sometimes life gets in the way, and life's hard, especially if you're navigating a neurotypical workplace. So just having that level of empathy that, okay, no one's going to die if you don't hit or achieve these goals, but we can redefine what that looks like for you. Sometimes it's changing your word because, you know, there's a global pandemic, or, you know, you have a baby, so or something else. There's a big life-changing factor. So those can be really key ways that we should just go, is this real? Have a half-year check-in. Is this real? Is this relevant? Businesses change, businesses are required, and ensuring that they're on target and it's still motivational. And then on the flip side, I'm conscious of time, so I will go really quickly. I've talked a lot about ADHD. For other neurodivergent individuals, so for example, if you have an autistic employee, they might not need the bite-sized chunks, but what they might need is really clear action points. So they're not. It's really clear what they're trying to do, what is expected of them, and what the time frame is of doing that, and the boundaries, funny enough, in doing so. And that's really clear. So it's about asking, but it's also about adapting to that particular thinking style. And when I talk about adapting, it's adapting to how that's communicated and achieved. So that's quite
That's
a long.
so helpful. No, that's super helpful, Sarah. Thank you so much. And I mean, just having buddies, and I love the fact that you kind of say, I've got 4, you know, why be limited by having one? We need different buddies.
We do. We absolutely do. There's different things for different areas of your life. So absolutely.
That's great. So what we'd love to do, so that it's not just everybody listening to me and Sarah, is to kind of give you all the opportunity to kind of talk about some things in smaller groups. So in a moment, we're going to go into breakouts, and we have 3 questions for you to explore in breakouts. So the first question is what are your ins and what are your outs for this year? What do I mean by that? Well, you might be thinking, you know, what is it I want to change? So it might be out with being a perfectionist and in with saying good is good enough. Or it could be, you know, you're going to be, you make sure you'll be out with kind of feeling frustrated about a particular situation, and in with taking control. So what are your ins or outs? And you can apply that to workplace goals, to personal goals, to health, fitness, relationships, whatever you want. So what are your ins and what are your outs? That's the first question. The second question is, as you listen to each other and you hear what each other's goals are, what's the support or you know, advice that you can give to each other? Because I think one of the things that Sarah and I both believe very strongly is we need other people to help us to make progress with our goals. And then the last one, which is a slightly different approach, and Sarah shared this with us, is what's your word for 2025? Sarah shared that her word last year, or was it 2 years ago, was boundaries. Yeah, and this year I think it's celebrate. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
So that's her word for this year. Is there a word that you want to kind of really embrace for the year? And what is it? And how can you apply it in different areas of your life? So 3 questions. So Jane, can we ask that you put us into our breakout groups? Probably about four or so people in each of them. And we'd love to have 15 minutes, and then we're going to all come back together.
And note that we might land in one of your breakout groups as well. So we'd love to just hear from you. If you want to chat anything through, then we're here for it. Thanks, Mary Jane. Mike, or either.